All right, hello and welcome to this FutureScape Virtual Edition. Thank you for being here with us. I'm Katarina, the Landscape Industry Specialist here at Vectorworks UK. Before I forget, and before we start the presentation, I would like to tell you about an event tomorrow. Tomorrow is the International GIS Day, and to celebrate this, we have put together a virtual treasure hunt. If you want to join us, go to Vectorworks booth and click on the link for the competition. There are two versions, one for Vectorworks users, where you download a Vectorworks file to play with it, and one for non-users. The link will take you to a landing page with instructions. You will learn a few useful Vectorworks tricks along the way, and the answer of the last quiz you then put in the field, in the answer field of the landing page, and we will draw two winners, one from each group. And this leads us straight into the first point of today's presentation, where we'll go through project from start to finish and look at how to set this up so you can become a better designer. Now, this is quite a strong statement, and I want you to fully understand what I mean when I say it. I'm the first person to say that there are no shortcuts. To create something good, which stands the test of time, you have to put in the effort. You have to do your research, and you have to learn and be responsive to what's needed. You have to understand the site, what restrictions it has, and how to find those little gold nuggets that will help you work with the site. You have to have a deep understanding of plants and horticulture, and you have to understand how to actually build your vision in real life. It's a tall order, but Vectorworks can help with a lot of this. Now, this is not a training session in the case that we are showing each step and each detail of the steps that we are working with, but instead we will be focusing on the workflow, how to approach a project and how to utilize Landmark and take advantage of more of its functions. I don't say that I'm fully learned. This is really like learning Photoshop. You will never be finished. You will never be fully learned, which makes it much more fun as well. And every day you have learned something new is a good day at work. I'm not either going to concentrate on how to create pretty pictures. If you're a garden or landscape designer, the clue really is in the name, design. We have to create detailed drawings that are buildable and functional on site. This should be your goal, not the one image that you can create. Of course, you also have to be able to relay your ideas to the client and perhaps sometimes even to win the project in the first place. But when you are building your model, think construction, not illustration. We will look a little bit at illustration in the end as well. So let's dive in. I will share my screen with you. So there, if you can't see it, shout in the chat. So I have 3 points that I want to take up. The first thing is draw things once. This is a really, really basic and ground rule sort of for when you're working in any kind of CAD program. If you draw things once instead of making copies of the same thing over and over and over again, when you are working and you have to do amendments or changes later on, you only have to change it in one place. You don't have to have it working everywhere. You don't have to change things in more than one place. The second thing is draw things at the right time. So often I can see people putting in an enormous amount of time into a master plan. They put in details about materials and details about little things that actually would come later on in the planning. The important thing is the geometry in the master plan, not the detailing. Most of the times, 9 times out of 10, the master plan will be changed before you get into the point of actually building it anyway. So it's better to save the energy and do these things later on. And the last thing is, just because Vectorworks can do it, it doesn't mean you have to do it. Vectorworks has so many different things you can do with it. You have all the different tools you have, so you can drop yourself into small details so easily. And I mean, I'm the first person, I'm a total nerd when it comes to this. I love everything new. And as soon as the new tool comes out, I am so excited about it and I want to learn about it. But you don't have to. You don't have to use every single gadget. Find what works for you and make the things that really makes you speed up your work and really makes your day, your everyday work when you're working with Vectorworks easier. That's the most important. So this presentation, it will is built on a project from Quercus Landscape and Garden Design. The original was drawn on pen and paper, with pen and paper, and here you can see a copy of the drawing. And I mean, it is beautiful, and I love hand-drawn plans. But you can imagine how long time this took. And you can also imagine the pain when the client comes and wants to change something. I mean, it takes so much time to redraw something like this. And also, this is all you've got, a master plan. Anything else that builds on this has to be drawn separately, measured, and annotated by hand. Sorry, my voice is a bit scratchy today. So Roger Smith and Chris Meny from Quercus, they decided it was time to step into the Vectorworks world. They bought 2 licenses, they set it all up, and then they realized quickly that this could actually make them slower than they had been before if they didn't put up a bit of a system in it. So I then spent some time with them last spring to teach them the program and how to build a structure for the studio, how to work after. And we created a library, we created a template with the title block and so on. And we used this project that we're going to look at today to set up the workflows that we decided for them to use to work after. And they also used it to learn the basics in Landmark and how to be efficient in Landmark. So thank you very much, Roger and Chris, for letting us use this project today and look at it. Where in the world are we? Excuse me. This is the first question you have to ask yourself in Vectorworks. You can set up a project after both a national grid and you can also georeference it. We're not going to go through this in detail today, but the point is that Vectorworks can combine these 2 systems. So you can have a survey in Cartesian coordinates like northing and easting, like you had in the national grid, and you can map it to a georeferenced image of the area. If you want to learn more about this, in the Vectorworks booth, there are links to a few webinars we've done before about these subjects. So go in and click through on those. And it will also take you to the Vectorworks University, which is fantastic. It's a gold mine for anything Vectorworks. And if you need to learn something new, you can search on all different things about Landmark in it. It's free and you can just sign up with your email. But what we are going to talk about today is the internal origin. I know this is really basic. No matter where you are in the world, Vectorworks has its own center of the universe. And this is this little blue marker in the middle of the screen here. This is the point from where Vectorworks calculates everything from. It really is the navel of all CAD drawings. For any CAD program to work and function properly, and it's not only for the Vectorworks, it's for all different CAD programs, you have to stay within a radius of approximately 5 kilometers from this mark. Not even a speck of dust can be further away in your drawing. If you're stepping outside this area, you will have a whole herd of problems. You will have strange geometry, things will be moving around, and the file will run like treacle. Not very nice at all. If you can't see this, the pale blue dot as I call it, go up to Tools, origin and locate internal origin, and then we'll turn it on. You should be used to always see this at the center of your drawing. 95% of all calls to our VSS support team is dealing with issues related to this. So if you take nothing else with you from this session today, please remember to have this in your drawing all the time. And then I can hear, of course, you can say, well, one of my projects is in Aberdeen, another one is in London. How can I stay within the 5-kilometer range? Well, the good news is that you can tell Vectorworks to what coordinates of the national grid are supposed to coincide with this dot, with this internal origin. And that's what I've done here. If we go in and look at this image, I have pulled in this geo image from the site where we're going to work right here. And I set it up so that the coordinates line up with the internal origin for where we are. The map comes from the GIS tool in the GIS tool set. We have it down here. And it's free to use. You don't need to have a separate license for this S3 services. And the maps comes from S3. You have, by using this link, the GIS link here, you have a whole world in detail mapped out for you in Vectorworks. You never have to make a screenshot of a Google Earth map again to be able to show where your site is located. So now, when the site is set up correctly, we can now start importing our survey. And that's really easy now. So you go to File, Import, Import DWG. You find just your survey, your DWG file with survey. And now, instead of, as you normally have to do, you have to go in and decide where you're going to center your survey. This will all be done automatically, and it will be automatically aligned with the internal origin. But the only thing you have to do is to tick this box here and say, this file contains georeference geometry, and it will all do it automatically. And because we are on Zoom, I'm not going to do it live. I have already done it. And here it is. We're going to take these ones away because we don't need those yet. So here you can see the survey is located exactly where it's supposed to be in the world. The next step, I would say, would be to create a site model. Now, you don't have to do this. You can work in 2D only if you want to, but it's so much fun to work in 3D, and you can get so much more information out of the model in your steps later down in the line in the workflow. So I think it's very well worth time to set it up as a site model. And especially if you have a site that is very undulated and you have a lot of level changes and so on. It really is outstanding when it comes to deal with levels. So when I imported my survey, I made sure that I also imported these little dots here. You can see there are 3D loci, and you can see that every 3D loci has a Z value, a level. So the next thing I will do is I will isolate, so I only have these 3D data. You can see I have them all here. This can also be 3D polygons that are giving up the contours of a site. It doesn't matter, any kind of level data you can use for here, but it has to have the actual Z values. So I select them all and I go up to landmark, create site model from source data. And here I have set up how I want my first site model to work. We have the maximum elevation, we have a minimum, I'm going to put that down to 0. I want to have the contours at 200, for example, and 5 will be a major contour. The 2D display, at the moment we're going to look at the existing only, and I will have the flow arrows on for now. And we have the same thing here, we have a 3D mesh, and just click OK. And this is how quick it actually take to do your site model. So if we go into 3D and look at this, this is where you have it, and you can see that all the little 3D loci are placed on the top of the surface. The next step is the site analysis. The site analysis is really a good thing you can do in Vectorworks. You can get an overview of the site. And the first thing is exactly what we have done here. We can see where the water, how the water is flowing. And this can inform you for some very important decision and very expensive, if you don't look at it, decisions when it comes to what to do with the site. You can use something called snapshots. So if you have the site model selected, you can go over to the object info palette and say create a snapshot. And this will create an image of the site model at this setting. So if we go into a 3D view, you can see they both look the same at the moment. But if I go now into my site model and change how I want this one to be looked at, I'm going to put the colored slopes instead. We now have two different looks of the site model. They're both the existing site, but on one you can see how it should look, and on this side here you can see the levels or the slopes of the site colored in different colors depending on the degree of slope you have. So the red ones are the ones with the steepest and so on. And you can set up this slope analysis how you want it in the site model settings. Again, this is really, really, really useful for, for deciding what you want to do. You can see, you can get an early warning if you have an area that is really steep and you think you might have to put in measures to stabilize the ground, for example, which would be very expensive. The next thing is the shadow analysis. Here I have also put in the Revit file of the building that came from the architect. We put it in the right place. I also put in an existing tree here in 3D. So this is one of the trees that is going to stay for the design later. And the next thing I can do is I can go and find a heliodon. And a heliodon is just a sun. We're placing it on the drawing. And the heliodon is really cool. You can decide where in the world you are. So you can put it for anywhere in the world, even what town you're in here in England. And then you can decide what time of the day you want to see the shadows. So at the moment it is in March the 20th at 9 o'clock in the morning. If I change this to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, for example, you can see how the shadows has changed. So this is really good if you're planning on putting a swimming pool somewhere, for example, or if you're looking at planting that needs a lot of sun. You can see how the shadows are changing, not just during the day, but also through the year. And the next thing you can do, which I know is a lot of clients find really exciting, is that you can make a solar animation. You can make a little movie and export it. There you show the shadows moving from sunrise to sunset, for example, for a certain time of the day or over the year. And you can then show the client to say, this is why what I have based my design on. And this is why I'm putting this here, not instead of there where you suggested it to start with. So that is a little bit about the site analysis. So we're going over to the next step, and that is to draw up our guides. If I have my survey here, and we're taking away the rest of the things so we don't have to look at it, I don't want to keep everything that comes into a survey normally, but I don't want to get rid of it either, because you might need the information later. The easiest way to just hide what you don't want to look at is if you've got a survey where you have things classified so that they created on different layers in the CAD drawing that you got. If that's the case, you can go up and use your visibility tool. This is one of the most underutilized tools in the tool set, and it is so cool. You can choose to use either classes or layers, but we're going to look at classes here. And I have now put the setting so that it says that anything I am clicking on will become invisible. So the first thing I do is I want to get rid of all these lines on the outside here. And the next thing, I want to take away the footprint of my building because I have a new building coming in anyway. So with 2 clicks, I got all these things taken care of. I'm doing the same thing as if I would go into the navigation palette and manually find the layers or the classes where these things were and turn them off. But you see how much quicker you can do it just by using the visibility tool. So the next thing is draw your guides. And this is super important, really, to be able to get balance on your design. This is the footprint of the new building. And we're going to rotate the work layer here so we can work easier on it. I'm just going to use a normal line and draw out a center line from this window here because there could be a vista that way. I'm going to draw a line from this door, and I'm going to draw a line from this door and from this one, from the center, because these are my important lines here. And of course, you could start drawing lines from your corners of the buildings and so on as well. When I've done my lines, I select them and I go up to modify, guides, make guide. What happens is you can see up in the object info palette that the lines have become locked, so you cannot touch them by mistake from now on. And they come in the class of guides. And this guide is really good, this class, because they will not be visible if you're printing it as well. So when you've done that, in this case, of course, we have a design already made. So what we want to do is we want to transfer it into Vectorworks. If you haven't done your design on paper, this is also where you would start playing with shapes and forms and figure out your design. But let's say that you have it on paper already. Here it is. The way I would do it, I would just import, just drag and drop in the PDF with your design, and then use it as an underlay and start drawing out all the different areas that I want to have. And I'm using very simple geometry and very clear colors, and it doesn't look very pretty, and that's not the point yet. I am working with shapes and forms and geometry, and my guidelines would be here as well, and I would build up the design this way. I don't care about classes, I don't care about layers. I do everything on one draft layer, and I use the none class most of the time, all the time. The only thing I'm using is color to see what things are, the different things are. So this is the footprint, for example, as pink. The terrace here is orange because it's standing out a lot. So when I'm happy with this, I also need to think about levels. As I said, levels are super important in any design, and that's really where your thought process has to start from when you start figuring out what to do with the site. And we have a really cool tool in Vectorworks. We have the grade tool. So if you go to the landscape tool set, and above the site modifiers, we have the grade tool. And again, I think this is quite underused, which is a shame. We can see that the footprint, the finished floor level of this house is on 4.2 meters. So we know that level, we know that the terrace should be on the same level. So I will start drawing a line with the grade tool from there to the end of the terrace here. And up comes this dialog box. I know that the starting elevation is 4250, yes? And I also know, if I knew the end level here, I could just put that in. I could just say elevation 2 is supposed to be a certain level. However, if I don't know it, and I just know that I need to have a downward ratio of 1 to 60, which would be normal on a hardscape on a terrace, that is what I'm putting in. And then you have one more choice to do. You can use this grade in 3 different ways. You can change it, the site model with it, so using it as a site modifier. You can also ask it to just pick up the levels that you have on your site model at the moment, or you can use it as I'm doing it here now, just as a 2D illustration of a slope on a hardscape. So as you can see here, I have a starting point of 4250. I have a downward grade slope of 1 to 60, and you get the final level at the bottom of it. Even if you're not working in 3D, this is super duper useful. You can also set up grids of this. So here I have 2 different grades that are connected to each other because we have a slope in the downwards direction here, but we don't want anything to slope into this corner of the raised bed here, because that would just make a big puddle. So we want to have a slight slope in this direction as well. So what I've done here, we have 2 different grades and they are both connected to one point, and I can then play with this and move it around. And you can build up grids like this of hundreds of grades really, and they all work together, and you can then adjust your site and your design as necessary with it. So when you are happy with your layout, with your concept layout, it starts to be time to produce the master plan. And this is where you can start looking at what things actually look like and to make sure it's pretty. We're going to go back over to the original file, and this is where Roger has started to develop the site. Instead of having my ugly colors, as I'm working with, he has replaced them. So for example, for the gravel here, he's used an image, so it looks more like gravel. And for the, I think I've done something with this when I was playing with it earlier here. Yes, I have. So for the planting areas, he has put in an extra layer with a planting line, so to say, which also have an image on it. So it looks a little bit more fluffy and a little bit softer. When you are using, if you're using plant lines like this, I would recommend, first of all, to put them in its class by itself, but also put them all on one layer. Because if you have all your plant lines on one layer, it's so easy to just take them away and not have them to interfere with any other of your drawings that you have. They have no value at all when it comes to construction drawing. They're just a decorative measurement. So when you've done this, then it is time to create your master plan. And that's super easy. And I'm sure you all know how to do that. You go up to View, Create Viewport. And I don't want to use that as a crop. And you decide on what layer you want to create the viewport. And of course, you always want to create your drawings that you're going to produce from sheet layers. This is the design layers where you're working, and the sheet layer is where you're producing the drawings. Already done this, of course, because it's a presentation. So this is your viewport, and you can also see that this is where you should put your annotations. All your annotations when it comes to this master plan here, we're putting it inside the viewport. So if I double click on this, I come up, I can either go in and crop the viewport, or I can go into annotate it and go in and annotate it. And you can see here we have put in a scale bar. First of all, the scale bar must be inside the viewport. Otherwise, it will measure whatever scale that the sheet layer is, and that is always one to one. So for it to be able to do its job, it has to be inside the viewport. And all the annotations, you can just use the call out. Zoom in a bit, and we can just find a lining up point, and we can say whatever we want to have. So fruit tree here, for example. This way, if you put the annotations in the viewport, first of all, you know you have the right size, so that if you need to shrink the design to fit onto a paper, your text is not going to shrink. at the same time. You know you will have a readable text as an end result. And also you don't have all these annotations messing up your design layers and being in the way. You have to turn off classes here and there and so on. Everything is gathered on your sheet layer and you can easily amend it when the changes are coming. So next step, let's see where we are. Let's say that you have your master plan and you have got an okay on it. It is all set. I would then go away from the prettiness again. I would take away the coloring and so on. If I don't have to keep it there, I would go back to my absolutely basic drawing. And now I would start converting these things into more intelligent objects. At the moment, there are just polygons and polylines and rectangles and so on. But Vectorworks can do so much more than that. So if we start around this terrace here, when you're working with a landscape design, the three things you probably will use most of all is landscape areas and hardscape areas and walls. So we're going to look at the landscape area first. You could just choose your landscape area tool, choose what landscape area style you want to use, and then just start drawing, tracing over what you've done already. But as I said before, I really don't like doing things twice. So instead, what you can do is you can select just the geometry you already made, right click it, or go up to landmark, create objects from shapes, and you would say then you want to create a landscape area. And you click OK, and hopefully this will work in Zoom. Yes, here it is. And it has created a landscape area. You can see that. You have automatically the area of it, of course. If this is draped over a site model, it would follow the contours of the site model and you will get the actual site size of it. So if it would be in a slope, Vectorworks would calculate the actual square meters you will have to plant up and so on. So this is quite a long time used tool in Vectorworks, but from 2021, there's some new things in it. And I will show you what it is. If you go into 3D and look at it, you can see we have the plants as you are used to be able to do. But from 2021, we also have the plant medium included in it. You can decide if you want to have mulch on top, for example, how thick it's supposed to be. You can decide how thick the layer of topsoil should be and what combination of nutrients it should be in the topsoil. You can specify everything down to the smallest part of it. And of course, when you're putting it on a site model, it will cut a hole in the site model. So it will also affect the cut and fill calculations of the site in the end. The same thing is working with the hardscape. So if we're going to use the hardscape tool now for the terrace, so we have selected it here, we can choose the hardscape tool, we choose whatever hardscape we want to work with, and we could just draw it again, or we can go up to landmark, create objects and shapes, and this time we want to use a hardscape. Click OK. And we have a hardscape created. And the same thing again, if we go into a 3D view, you can see here, under my orange thing, we have the hardscape, we have the wearing course, we have the bedding course layer, and we have the subbase under it. And of course, Vectorworks can keep track of all these things. In a worksheet, so you can get both the areas, you can get the volumes of the different materials as well in it. And this is super good to have, both to be able to give to your contractor, but also for you to be able to make a calculation of how much a project is going to cost. Of course, you can then very quickly also, because all these things are styles, so you can very easily just replace this style or replace this landscape area with a different landscape area if you wanted to. You can just replace it and take in another landscape area instead. Or for example, if you had a hardscape and you're suddenly realizing that it's going to be far too expensive to have this amazing paving you found, we're going to have to go to gravel instead. And you can very quickly change the design that way as well. So now you're starting to be able to actually use what you did before and save time and save energy, and to be able to use it in an intelligent way. Production drawings. This is the next big thing, of course. And we started on it with the hardscape and the landscape areas and so on. This is where you really, really can start having an advantage of using Vectorworks and using the different tips and tricks and tools you have inside the program. So if we should look at, for example, to create a hard landscape layout plan, I go back to my normal drawing again. I can take these things away there. And then we go into, I think I deleted my orange field there. We have to pretend it's still there. I can go into, I can go in and use something called a data visualization. If I wanted to use this and show my contractor what hardscapes are where on the plan, very simply, first of all, I don't want to use color on drawings. Any drawings that has to be on site, to be used on site, I would recommend to use as little color as possible. Most of the times they will be printed in black and white, and any information that you're giving in color will be lost. And it will be lost on site where it will be mostly needed. So I will, instead of having to redraw this, I just can go up and use a data visualization I already created. We have it called Hard Landscape Materials here. Let's see how long time this will take. And this is what I have produced then. So I decided, I told Vectorworks, I want you to use, instead of my pink base for my footprint, I want it to look black, and I want to use hatches for all the areas instead of the colors I've been working with. It's really easy to create a data visualization, and you can use all kinds of different information in it. So if we go in and look at this just very quickly, the way I done it is I've looked at the different classes. So you can use a lot of different functions. You can also use different records or parameters to make the visualization based on it. I then decided what classes I want to show, which are important, and then of course are the hardscape ones and also some of the structure. And then I asked Vectorworks to draw all other objects grayed, so they are away from it, they're not taking over the drawing and what I'm looking at. I have then gone into each of these hardscapes, and I said, for example, for the Dutch pavers that we have in these areas here, I said, instead of using the color that I had earlier, I have said, please use a hatch instead. And I decided, showed what hatch I want to have, and I clicked OK. And the same with the footprint. I said, instead of having my pink footprint I had on the building, override it with a solid in black instead. So that's how you can build up a database to work exactly as you want it, and also to show exactly the things that you find important in this drawing. So you don't have all these disturbances of things around it. You can work with these both in the design layer, but I would recommend when you are doing your drawings, when you are doing your plans to send out, you actually do the visualization in the viewport instead, and you can do it there. So you don't have to do it in the design layer. You can just go into your viewport, and you can go to the data visualization there, and you see we have access to the same viz here as we had in the design layer. I use this all the time, and it is so cool, and you will love it when you start working with it. I use it a lot for planting plants, for example. So I have my plants set up so that anything evergreen I can just turn on. So all the evergreen plants in my plan are green, and everything deciduous is orange or something. And that way I can see I have a good balance between deciduous and evergreen while I'm working. So that's the way I would use it in the design layer, specifically as a working tool instead. Okay, it's 10 past, so we have a little bit more time. We're going to look at the setting out plan as well, because this can be a lot of work. Here I have, again, I have the same very simple drawing in the background. I have graded out. You can see here in the navigation palette. And I then made a new layer that I called setting out layer. And here I have pulled in, I had made a line for my baseline. I have marked out the centers of the doors. They are the most important ones. And you can see I have started to pull in my dimensions. And you can see how easy it is to just make something that is very clear and very easy to read. So if I start from the side of the building here and just click on the first one, I can then go to the next one and the next edge and the next edge and so on. And I can so quickly just mark out the whole length of a building like this. When it comes to setting out plans, it is really important that you have all the information you need, but not too much. I see setting out plans all the time that has hundreds of dimensions. There are so many dimensions that you don't know where to start, and most of them are not related to anything. When you're making a setting out plan, it always have to be measurable from some point. And if you're thinking about it as telling a story, that you want to try to tell the story the way that you designed it. So, okay, I center my path here on the doors. So we know that that has to be the center line. And then it doesn't matter if the door is 2.42 or if it is 2.46. You have measured out the center line of the door, and that's the important measurement. So it's very easy then when you're coming on site to see what is the most important thing to follow. And then of course you just create a viewport just like the other ones to be able to create a plan from it. Lighting plans. Again, this is a place where I am really bad at it because I am very bad at counting things by hand. So instead of just making little drawings or little symbols, what I've done is, if you go into the resource manager, you can see I have two symbols created for light fittings here. I have one spike light and I have a path light. And that would be quite clever. You could just have the symbols and you could just collect the symbols. But what I've also done is I have created a record format. And the record format is, it's just a way of attaching data to anything. You can attach a record to any geometry you do in Vectorworks, or to anything really. I sound like the cat in the hat here. It's just a form, so to say, where you have decided what information you want to have in it. So we have the quantity, we have the type, we have the spike light, we have what color it is in, the manufacturer you can write in, and if you have a product code for it. So this is then so easy, for example, to send out to poor Chris at Landscape Plus that always have to take mine and say, this is what I need, give me a quote, please. They are very happy when you can give a correctly counted plan. And lighting fittings are expensive, so you don't want to add too many to them at all. So you have your light fitting, you have your record. To attach them both together, to marry them, you just go into the, in the resource manager, go into the symbol, you right click it, and you just say attach record. Say light fitting is the one I want to attach. And if you know already what fitting you will use in this drawing, I would recommend to go in and edit the values and say if it's going to be black or copper, for example, and so on, because then that information will follow each instance of the symbol as well when you're using it. And then you just click OK. And now this symbol, every time you use it, has a record connected. So then when you just update your worksheet with the light fittings, it will all show there. and you don't have to make the mistakes as I normally do. So the rest of what you have to do on your lighting plan, you just have to divide it up in circuits and put the extra information on if you want to have a remote control of it, and if you want to have any other bells and whistles with it. You have to draw your ductings, of course. You have to show where you have to pull out cables from the house, where the connection point is, if you have to go under hardscapes and so on and so forth. But by just using a simple thing like a symbol for your lighting and attach a record to it, you take away a lot of the work. Last thing we have time with to look at is planting plans. And to do that, we're going to go back to the original drawing that Roger has made. And we're going to look at the planting plan first here. I recommend when you do your planting plans, you go with the same thing again. You have the drawing you've done before, grayed out in the background so you can see all your planting beds. And then you just make one layer and you do all your planting in one layer. When you've done that, the one thing I would think about is a lot of times when you make a planting, you want to jump from side to side of a path like this, for example, and put the same plants on both sides. I will make sure that all the plants in one bed are only connected to that bed. So you haven't a group that goes from one side to another, and so on. And the reason for that is that when you have done your planting plan, I want you to move each bed to its own separate layer. So you can see here we have a layer for each bed going down here. And the reason for this is that if you do that, you can then create a worksheet with a plant schedule per bed. Super duper easy. So we move these things over to each of the layers, and then we create a viewport of each of the layers onto the planting plan sheet layer. We're going to look at the planting plan. I can go into this one. And in the center of the drawing, I have made just a copy of the viewport of the master plan and placed it here and made it really small. And I'm using this just as a guidance so that you can read the plan and very easily see where each of these beds belong. I'm sorry if you hear a bird in the background now. It's my daughter's budgie that has decided to join the conversation. So each of these planting beds is its own viewport, and you can then go in and put on your data tags. This is the one place I say that you can go away from this rule about placing all your annotations on the sheet layer, because a lot of times it can be easier to actually do it on the design layer on each of the, when you have separated the beds. The reason is because the plants themselves has a tag in the tool. So each plant, you can just use the plant tag directly from it. However, there's a new way to do it, and it's a much, much, much better way to do the plant tags. And I was the first person to say, like, oh, what do we need this new data tag for? Because we have the plant tag already. But I am a total convert, and I love the data tag. You can set up your data tags as you want to have them. You find them under the Dims and Nodes tool set. Go to the data tags, and the data tags are quite smart because first of all, you can set them up to look exactly as you want them to look. Yes, and they are also, you can tell them what to look for. So this plant tag that we have set up here, it only reacts on plants. So if I take the plant tag and I hover over something that is not a plant, it doesn't react. But as soon as I come over a plant, you see it goes red, and I can pull it out and I can do my plant tag. By using the data tag instead of the internal plant tag, you have so much more control over where you're placing the tab. Let's see what's going on. There we go. So, and you can see how quickly you can just create your planting plan data tags. This is a game changer for me. I absolutely love it. The reason why I would suggest that you can put these things onto your design layer instead is that if you have big groups or you have a planting plan where you have a big tree that covers other plants under it, it might be difficult for the tool to actually react onto the plants that you want to put the tag to, and you just want to take the top one instead. Then of course, when you have created that, you also want to create a plant schedule. And again, this is something you should have in your libraries. You should have your worksheets. You make them once. You never have to recreate them again. You just pull them into the drawing you're working on. But we're just going to make a very quick schedule here. We go up to the tools, reports, and create report. We're going to call it FutureScape 2020. And what we want to look at the basic criteria, and we want to look at objects with a record. And we're going to use the plant record, of course. So this is all the different fields that are available in the plant record. But we want to start with the category, add that, and then we want to have the quantity after that. We want to have the Latin name or botanical name. And then we probably want to have the schedule size as well. And if you have any notes, for example, that concerns the nursery, for example, if you want them to absolutely not be grown in polytunnels or something similar, this is the place where you can add those to as well. So you have decided what information you want in the schedule. For this time, I'm going to say place report on drawing. Click OK. I place it. And this will be a long, long, long list because this is every single plant that is in this drawing. So this is a good start, but now we have to start sort of making it look a little bit better. So we go into the database header. This is the line that sort of guides all the rest of the information in it. And the first thing we want to do is we want to sort the categories, and we want to use descending sorting, because if you do that, you will get all your trees at the top and then your shrubs and perennials and so on. And this is probably the way you would like to send the schedule to your nursery. The next thing we do is we go into the Latin name and we say we want to sort this one ascending instead from A to Z. And we also want to summarize the items. So we only get one line for each of the species you've been using. And when you do this, you see that something happens with the quantities. And this means that you have several different groups of plants in it. And to be able to see the actual number of plants in this, you also have to go into the quantities and do the sum, the values as well. And then immediately you will have the numbers in here. So this is how quick you can create your plant schedule. Then of course you can go in and format the whole thing and make it nice and look nice and use whatever text style you want to have and so on. And then you can just go to File, Export Worksheet, and from 2021 you can export it directly into Excel as well, which is really good. The one thing I would like to say though is that if you do this and you're creating your worksheet, when you have sent it away, delete or put it in superseded or something. Like, don't use that worksheet again, because it is so easy to be tempted to when you have a sub, for example, for a plant you can't find. Instead of going into the Vectorworks drawing, you just change it in your Excel sheet. And that means that as soon as you do that, your planting plan will not be up to date from then on. And you think that, oh, I will never need it again, the project will be done. There will always come the situation when the client comes up and say, oh, what was the plant exactly I had for this corner of the garden? Can I have 100 more? And if you don't have the right information in your plan, you will start doubting yourself and you don't know exactly what is right. So that is all we have time for today. Thank you very much if you've been able to follow along all the way to the end here. I will now stop sharing here and see if I can see if there are any questions in the question box here. So let's see here. There's only one. Katarina, have you got the site model on a different layer when you are creating objects from shapes? Yes, I always have the site model on its separate layer, and that is always to do with just good housekeeping, really. You want to have the layers, you separate things from each other by where they are in the cake. So you would have the site model, you have the survey, you have the site model, you have the hardscapes, the soft landscaping, you have things like furniture or structures that you're building. Then you have your trees on the next level, next layer. And then on the top of all, I usually put my levels layer because I want to be able to see my levels all the time while I'm working. I don't want to have to turn off layers along the way. If they are on a layer by themselves on the top, you can always have access to them while you're working. And there were no other questions. I don't know if that was because it was absolutely self-explanatory or that you have stopped watching. Anyway, I just want to say one more thing before we go, and I almost forgot about it. It is that if you are a student at the moment, please go into Vectorworks website, and I think you can find a link for it as well in the in our booth today. And sign up for the design competition. There is the student design competition we have every year, and the prize is £2,000 that you can use for anything to do with studying, really. You can use it for books, for traveling, if you need to do site visits, if you need to pay for tuition, anything you want to. The competition starts on the 1st of December, and it finishes in March, end of March, and the winner will be announced in April. So if you're interested, go in, sign up for it, and we will send you an email when it's time to start looking at the project and so on. Thank you very much for joining me here today, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of FutureScape 2020, the virtual edition. And if you have any questions more or want to talk to me or anybody else at Vectorworks, either come and visit us at the booth or sign up for a meeting with one of us at a time that suits you. Thank you so much for the day and have a good day. Bye-bye.